Want help to grow your business? Download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.
Hello again and welcome to another episode of How I Doubled. My name is Pete Quist and this is the show where we take a look at businesses that have doubled their turnover within the last 2 years. We take a look at the 5 biggest factors that have led to that, break them down and hopefully help you implement the same sorts of things into your business as well. Well, globally, there are very few architectural practices that are led by women. Here in Australia, that number is less than 1%. Today's guest has completely bucked that trend to not only grow in a male-dominated industry, but also thrive in her business to create a business doubling its turnover to a very successful 6-figure a year turnover business. From Your Architect, please welcome Rebekah Hurworth. Beck, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Great, I got through that intro. That's the important thing. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Okay, so first of all, tell me, for everyone watching, what is it that your business actually does?
Well, traditionally we're an architecture practice, but generally speaking, what we do is we help families get into the right home for them, so the right home for their needs and for their budget.
Okay, so the term architect, it has some pre-thoughts about it for different people. Different people, it means different things. But obviously architects, for someone watching out there, they might not actually know. You said it gets the right people into the right homes. Can you kind of expand on that a little? Like, how does it all work?
Well, architecture is a profession. It's got this pretty title, but it doesn't actually tell people what people do. Because in my industry, with the friends I went to university with, some of them work on defence projects, some of them do skyscrapers. For the industry, I actually work on the little stuff. So for you, it might still be a very big home or a very big project, but within the bigger construction industry, it's the little stuff. Within that though, we make sure that the building of the project, the thing that gets done, it's a whole process and there's lots of different stages. And for us, the really important thing is the first bit, which is the strategy stuff about working out what is the right thing for you. It doesn't matter what a good job I do on designing the building or making it all happen if we're doing the wrong thing to start with. So where a lot of architects really focus on providing their professional skills, we actually focus more so on getting the right thing to start with.
Okay, so if I come to you for your service, what is the start to finish? Do I literally come to you and, get a pen and paper out and say, there's your design, have fun, and then I go away? How does the whole process work? Where do you start and where do you stop with your service?
Okay, in the architecture world, we have certain processes that have been done for over 100 years, recommended by the Institute of Architects. So I could walk you through that journey, which is what most other architectural practices do. But in my own practice, we've actually changed that pattern and we do things quite differently. And the reason we do that is because we looked at the system that was already being done, that everyone else does, and we looked at our clients, and it became very obvious to us that they had needs that weren't being fulfilled in that process. The process was very easy for the architect, but it wasn't always easy for the client. So we've modified the entire process to work towards what's going to be more useful, more beneficial for the client. In this day and age, we've also got a much more informed and educated client. So 100 years ago, if you went to an architect and said, build me this mansion, you didn't really have any knowledge about what was going to happen, so the architect just did it. These days, I know my client has done homework, they've watched TV shows, they're a fairly intelligent person, so I'm in a different position where I can give them a lot more choices and they can make the right choice for whatever their situation is. So to answer your question, we start with a free initial consultation. And that's within our local area, but we do Skype meetings for outside where it's not feasible for us to travel to. What that means is you get to spend half an hour to an hour talking with me, not just a registered architect, a heritage architect, but the business owner about your project. And we do as much strategy work in that first session as we can. And I would say 1 in 10 people that I see, by the end of that period, they've decided that building a house or renovating actually isn't the right answer for them, and they go and buy a finished property. And for me, that's the right answer for them. I don't care about turning them into a job if that's not the right answer. I want them to get the right home. From a business point of view, how many referrals do I get from those people when it hasn't turned into a job? You can imagine that they're pretty happy getting the right advice for them, not biased advice. So we do get a lot of referrals from the ones that don't turn into work for us. So that first initial consultation gives them an opportunity to see just how much value we can bring to their situation and what they're trying to achieve. It also gives them an opportunity to see how we work. So they get to kind of try us on for size and see if it's comfortable, see if that personality match is right. And I think that's a really important part. I say to people all the time, you're going to be working with an architect for probably 2 years. You want it to be someone you like, but you also want it to be someone who gets you, because they're going to have to do a lot of things on assumptions. And if they don't get you, they're probably not going to be making the right assumptions. And in other bits and pieces, they might not be giving you the right options or the right builder mix or the right things if they don't get you, if they don't understand where your fears are, where your important drivers are.
Okay, so once we then decide this is going to be a relationship that's going to work for us both, and that relationship begins, you said it's a 2-year process, so you work with the builders as well?
So we can work with the builder if you want to, or we can support you to work with your builder. And that's what I mean by the options that we give. So generally speaking, you've got the initial consultation, then you've got all the designing process, town planning process if that's a part, the construction drawings, and then the build. Now, most architects will always manage the build for you. In the industry, it's a thing we call contract administration, but in our practice, we only do it in about one in 10 projects. We find that most people, provided they have the time and the willingness to learn something and they've picked a good builder, they don't need us. We're always available to help and support them, but they can run that themselves, and that's a lot of cost saving that they can do. But in the industry, that's not traditionally done that way.
So they can even take the design, take it to their builder, and that's it, and
Absolutely.
your job is complete.
Sure.
Or you can work with a builder, whether it's theirs or a relationship that you've created, to take them through that process as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's their choice, and we're happy to support them in whichever choice is the right answer for them.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and I mentioned it in the introduction. There are very few architectural practices around the world that are led by females. You buck that trend completely. Less than 1% here in Australia, is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, Dr. Paula Whitman did a study in 2004, and the revision of that in 2014 reinforced that.
Which is extraordinary, because when we look at the numbers of women going through the educational process, it's not less than 1% of women that are actually doing the studying. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. In the university degrees for architecture, it's a real 50-50 mix of male-female. And if anything, I'd say there's slightly higher female presence in the universities than male presence. So it's interesting to see how that set up in the education stuff at the start transforms into industry and then transforms into those high level positions within the industry.
This happens in a lot of industries. This isn't just restricted to architecture. How did you break that mould?
In all honesty, I looked around at all the practices that I could choose to work for, and there wasn't a single practice that I would be proud to work for, that I agreed with their morals, I agreed with how they set up their firm, and I could see myself working for the next 50 years. So I got to a point that I went, well, if there isn't one that fits that bill of what I'm looking for, surely I'm not the only person. Maybe I just have to create it and be that person for someone else. So one of my goals in setting up my practice wasn't to make lots of money and wasn't to do all these other award-winning things, have my name in lights. It was actually to create a practice that people wanted to work for, that people actually went out of their way to say, as soon as there's a position there, I want to work there because I believe in what they believe in. And if I'm spending my time there, I want to spend my quality time somewhere where they actually have the same morals and ethics and beliefs that I do.
Setting up your practice, did you have the same challenges that, say, a man would in going through that process? Or did you come across roadblocks as a female because there's so few that have done it in the industry?
The problems I had weren't so much because there's so few that have done it in the industry. The problems that I had were more because I look a little bit young for my age. And being female, when people meet me and I'm the business owner, the first thing they said was, well, how old are you? And did you start your own practice straight out of university? So I constantly had to justify my background and my expertise. I got to the point, my business card doesn't actually say that I own the business, it just says architect. Because if someone wants to believe that there's an old guy in a black turtleneck sitting in the office back there, that's fine. But I was surprised at how much criticism I had in people's expectation of what I should be able to do because I looked young and I was female. in that particular industry. That happened a lot at networking things and places outside my industry. So that was where I found it surprising. I didn't get as much negative stuff that I had to deal with and overcome within the industry. It was more when I went outside the industry that I really had to start learning how to talk about myself in a different way because of that response.
Okay, so let's segue into point number 1 on today's episode, which is actually networking, which you've just mentioned. And this is a great segue to continue the conversation. So point number 1 for any business with regards to being a strategy to double turnover is networking, which seems obvious, but this has been a pretty crucial part of your business.
Absolutely. When I started, it was in 2008 and it was at the start of the global financial crisis. So I had to look at what was I going to do to bring business in. And when a business is new, you normally have lots of one thing and that's time, and normally not much of another thing and that's money.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.